Hey everyone, Callum from Cagefront here. Welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, welcome to the channel. We have UFC Fight Night, Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi taking place this weekend in Canada, Edmonton, Canada. And last time the UFC went to Canada at UFC 297, the Canadians did not do so well at all. And I'm going to be predicting and breaking down every single fight in this card with a lot of Canadians in it. And I will say that they are going to be doing better than last time. But as well as the matchups that we have on this card, we have rule changes as well. The 12-6 elbow is now fully legal, as much as it is to Jon Jones's joy and his record if that does get changed, which it technically now should. But more importantly than the 12-6 elbow being legal and how good that is for ground and pound fighters, we also have the change in the grounded opponent rule, the knee to the grounded opponent. So if your opponent has their hands on the canvas and their knees are not, they can still be kneed. They are not counted as a grounded opponent. The only way they are counted as a grounded opponent now is if they have at least one knee on the canvas. So hands do not count anymore, knee away. So that's going to mean a lot more KOs, a lot more ground and pound, and that is what we want in the UFC moving forward. So without further ado, hopefully we see more in this card just straight off the jump. Let's get into the first fight of Ivana Petrovic versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. Now, Petrovic, she is the fighter that's probably better on the ground. She's good with her clinch striking, lands almost 3 takedowns per fight, and she's just naturally a bit more aggressive on the ground, and she's been more successful in terms of submissions as well. Now, that being said is great, but when we look at her on the feet compared to Jamey-Lyn Horth, not as good. I just don't see her being as technical, not as crisp. She hasn't fought as good a competition as well. She fought Luana Carolina, who is pretty much not UFC level, got into the second to the third round against Luana, and she was completely gassed out. She was absolutely done. And when we look at that compared to Jamey-Lyn Horth and fighting, fights like Veronica Hardy, who's better than both Liang Na and Luana Carolina, Jamey-Lyn Horth has just got the better experience here. And yes, Petrovic has got the 5-inch reach advantage here, but the striking, she's just not as clean and not as clinical with it. So the reach doesn't really matter if you can't use your hands that well, and that's where Jamey-Lyn Horth is just going to get the better of it. She's got better boxing, she's better at just getting deep into exchanges and just moving faster in a linear way, and that's where I don't think Ivana Petrovic is going to be able to deal with that as best as Jamey-Lyn Horth did with Veronica Hardy and fighters that she's fought, other fighters that she's fought. I just don't see Ivana Petrovic really giving Jamey-Lyn Horth any real big issues on the feet. Jamey-Lyn Horth has also got very good takedown defense in comparison with when it comes to that division and obviously the lower ranks of that division. And if Ivana Petrovic can't get this to the ground and keep it on the ground, which I don't think she's going to be able to, I think Jamey-Lyn Horth is going to be able to take this one by a pretty clear decision win here. I just don't see Ivana Petrovic threatening on the feet. I see Horth threatening on the feet, and Ivana's not going to be able to keep her down. Neither of these guys have been finished. I don't see them getting finished in this fight. So Jamey-Lyn Horth, clear, comfortable, 30-27 decision here. Moving up the card to Cody Gibson versus Chad Anheliger. Now, Gibson, I'm going to say it here against Chad. Chad's obviously the Canadian fighter, but Cody Gibson is just statistically better everywhere. He's better on the feet. He's better on the ground. He has the physical advantages, 6 inches of reach in advantage, 4 inches of leg reach as well. And he's taller. He's just bigger in frame, and that's just going to be a really difficult thing for Chad Anheliger to deal with. He's just not technical enough to outskill Cody Gibson on the feet, on the ground. I just don't see it there for him. And look, both of them have got submission-based liabilities, so unless Chad can get him on the ground and take him out, because he's not going to knock out Cody Gibson. Don't see that happening. Obviously, Anheliger hasn't been knocked out either, but in his last fight, he got stung like 4 or 5 times. So I'm a bit concerned in terms of that when Cody Gibson is so aggressive on the feet. And they're both getting older. They're both 37 years old. And Chad Anheliger having pretty poor head movement too. This is just a clear path to Cody Gibson getting a decision win here. Or honestly, looking around the 3rd round, could honestly be a KO TKO finish for Cody Gibson. But relying on that durability, I'm going to say that Gibson is going to get it done by a decision, and Chad Anheliger is going to hold in there. But I think it's going to be pretty brutal, pretty one-sided on Cody Gibson's side. I mean, he's just fought better opposition as well. He fought Brad Katona. He's fought Miles Johns as well. And look, Kelleher as well, even. I mean, Kelleher, you don't really compare, but he absolutely destroyed Kelleher in his last fight. And yeah, ultimately, Anheliger, in comparison to Cody Gibson, when it comes to their careers in terms of the fighters they've fought, as well as their skills, and obviously, most importantly, physical attributes, Cody Gibson's taken this one pretty clear, 30-27. Moving up the card to Garrett Armfield versus Serhiy Sidey. Now, this is a very interesting matchup because both of these guys land at a pretty high clip. They land over 5 strikes per minute, but the accuracy is definitely on Armfield's side. He's got double the accuracy. He hits at about a 65 to 66% clip, whereas Sidey is like a 30 to 35% clip. And Armfield, just similar to the other two as well, when it comes to Horth and when it comes to Gibson, Armfield's just fought the better competition. He's fought the better competition. He's very durable. I mean, his fight against Heastand was legendary. It was an amazing fight. So it shows that it takes a lot to get him out of there. Now, Sidey, he is obviously the taller of the two. I mean, he's pretty tall for 135, and he's got very good pressure, good teep kicks and leg kicks as well. And he has had very entertaining fights against Ramon Tavares in the UFC so far. And it was arguable that he won the fight against Tavares in the split decision in the last one and knocked him out in their first one. So Sidey definitely is a good fighter, do not get me wrong. But Garrett Armfield, I do think that this is one of the safer underdog picks here. I honestly do believe. I think he's striking combinations are just a bit better, and he's just a bit more durable than Sidey as well. When Sidey fought Tavares, he was getting pieced. He was getting pieced up, and there was blood all over his face, and he was getting hurt pretty badly, especially in the first half of the fight, and then he really started turning it around. So yes, he's durable and he can come back in the 3rd round, but Armfield is very good, very technical when it comes to the 1st and the 2nd rounds. So that's where I think that, along with the wrestling threat of Armfield, and he does actually have pretty good grappling and submission capabilities. I know his record doesn't say so, but he has gotten fighters in pretty bad predicaments, but they just slip out when it comes to submission. So honestly, I think as an underdog pick, I'm going to take a 29-28 decision here. I'm going to take Armfield in the 1st and 2nd, just really using clinical boxing, mixing in takedowns, and then I think Sidey will really come alive in the 3rd round, just really start putting on that volume and outland Armfield, but too little too late, 29-28 decision for Garrett Armfield. Now, moving up the card to Alexandr Romanov versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Now, this fight is pretty important for the both of these guys because they're both coming off losses. I mean, Romanov got taken out by Jailton Almeida and Nascimento got taken out by Derrick Lewis. So this is important because Romanov's 13th ranked, Rodrigo Nascimento is 15th ranked. Whoever loses this will have to fight out of the top 15. So I hopefully this really puts a drop of desperation into this fight, and we can really get some like good brawls and good just ground game, just a good fight overall, because that's what needs to happen. They need to impress. Now, both of them on the feet, they both hit at pretty decent clips, 56%, and are both pretty diverse on the ground. I would probably give the advantage to Romanov overall. He's a bit more decorated, obviously has more success in the submission-based finishes, 9-1 compared to 6-0. But the technical boxing and the distance management of Nascimento is what I really think can get this one done. But I think it's going to be by a decision. I think we're just going to get a lot of feeling out through the 1st round. And then I think they're going to come alive in the 2nd to the 3rd with the wrestling, with the boxing, just make it a pretty full MMA-based game. But I just do think that Nascimento is just bit cleaner on the feet compared to how close it is on the ground. I think Nascimento just naturally has more tools, and I think that he can get this one done. I think it'll be 29-28. I think Romanov will have some success in the first round, really mixing in, using that strength, mixing in those takedowns to get him down and be able to hold him and ride him out until the second round. But that's when I think Nascimento will really get a grip on the takedown defense, seeing the way Romanov tries to get him to the ground, those entries that Romanov uses. Romanov is a fighter that uses very heavy, just very strong base takedowns. He doesn't really just, leans in for singles and tries to trip. He tries to throw his opponents every time, and that's all well and good if he can get them out in the first round. Now, if he can't, that's when his stamina starts draining rapidly, and that's where Nascimento, with that clean technical boxing, is going to be able to take advantage of Romanov and pull out that decision. And honestly, I know Romanov is huge, like he's around that 260 weight, but he has so much fat on him. I'm actually wondering if he can cut to 205, because with his skill set, with the way 205 looks, honestly, if he can make it, I think he should, because I think he could do some damage with that ground game. But in this fight, I don't think it's going to be going his way. Moving up the card to Youssef Zalal versus Jack Shore. Now, this is a very interesting fight because we have Jack Shore, who is a very clean striker, good accuracy, throws at a higher output than Zalal as well, and he's very defensively sound. But when we look at Youssef Zalal, this guy just has super underrated just written all over him. I mean, he is a very just durable, very sneaky fighter. He's good at getting his takedowns, very good at hunting versatile based submissions, has improved a lot on the feet since coming back into the UFC. And I mean, the durability side of things, especially now, I mean, his decision loss against Ilia Topuria is aging like fine wine. I mean, this guy, Zalal, did not get finished by the chokes that Ilia was putting on. He got hit with some clean shots against Ilia as well. That has put Volk away. That has put Max away. Has not put Youssef Zalal away. So that is something that really needs to be taken in consideration, because I just don't see Jack Shore taking Zalal out. I don't see it happening unless Zalal gets injured somehow. It's very hard to take this guy out. And granted, Shore is defensively sound on the feet and he is hard to take down. But I just think that Zalal is he's just better. He's just a better fighter overall. Better on the feet, better on the ground. He's defensively sound, and he's got most importantly, a very good mentality now in comparison to the first stint that he had in the UFC, because his game on the feet, his game on the ground, everything has just improved. He's rounded out his game so well. He's sharpened it very well. And I think that he is going to get into the top 15 at some point. And I see him getting this one done by a decision win here. I think he's just got the stronger wrestling discipline there, which is really I think that's just going to cause trouble for Jack Shore just in terms of the clock. I think Zalal's going to be really going to be able to land the better shots on the outside with his lateral movement, in and out, with his linear movement too, and then get those takedowns and control Jack Shore for a 30-27 decision, just because Jack Shore is good, but Zalal is just better everywhere else. Now, moving on to Victor Henry versus Charles Jourdain. Now, first things first we need to look at this fight is that Charles Jourdain has cut down to 135 pounds bantamweight for the first time in his career, and that is after getting absolutely annihilated by Gene Silva. So it's going to be very interesting to see how his chin holds up after not only getting finished for the first time, but in combination with a brand new weight cut that he's never done. And that's where it's going to be an issue, not only in terms of that durability, but when he's cutting down in terms of that cardio as well, because he's not the tallest featherweight, but he's pretty filled out. And that's when I look at that against a guy like Victor Henry, who is just ridiculously durable, like a lot of fighters on this card, which makes it very hard to predict. But Victor Henry, 7-0 with KO TKOs, 8-0 with submissions. He has been around for a very long time. Obviously 37 years old. Guys have a 9-year age difference, which can come into play. But if you haven't seen Victor Henry fight, the guy is a dog. Like, he is very aggressive when it comes to the boxing, very clean combinations, good hooks to the body, really backs up his opposition, really puts on a lot of volume, and on the ground he's very good too. He's just overall, he is very well rounded. It's just against fighters who are more powerful than him that he does naturally struggle with, which is where those decision losses has come from, out of primarily damage. Now Victor Henry as well, natural weight class compared to Jourdain, throws at a much higher clip, and I think the stamina difference there is really going to be key. I think moving into those second and third rounds, Henry with that consistent volume, those consistent shots to the body, I think that is where Victor Henry is going to pull out a decision win here. Charles Jourdain obviously is good with the boxing. He's got good submissions as well, but I just think Victor Henry, he is very fast, especially for his age. He's looked very good recently, in a lot of form, and I just think with all these new tests for Charles Jourdain, I don't think this is the right move for him. Moving up the card to Ariana De Silva versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. Now, this fight is where I think we could see those 12-6 elbows come into play, because Jasmine Jasudavicius is a very good, just dirty ground game expert. Like, she is very good at just piling on the opponent against the cage, dragging them to the ground, and just putting on a bunch of ground and pound. I mean, if you haven't seen her fight against Priscilla Cachoeira, she absolutely annihilated her on the ground, and that's without 12-6 elbows. So if Jasudavicius gets that chance in this fight, which she said that she is keen for it in the interview, talking about the obviously legal rule change, we could definitely see those 12-6 elbows in play. Now, on the feet, Ariana De Silva, she has the finishing capabilities there. She can get finished too, but Jasudavicius is more of a volume fighter. She's more so at range. She's either at range with the jab, or she's straight for a double leg, single leg, getting this to the ground and making it dirty. But Ariana De Silva, she has the power advantage here over Jasmine, don't get me wrong. So Jasudavicius needs to make sure that she's not being passive, otherwise De Silva could possibly catch her. But the issue with Ariana is that she struggles with constant pressure and the control against the cage and just in general, because that is exactly what happened in her fight against Karine Silva, and that's exactly what Jasudavicius can do for 3 rounds, absolutely no problem. And that's where I think Jasudavicius is just going to be able to take this fight by decision. I think she's going to be able to use that jab at range, mixing it up with the wrestling as well, drown out the clock, just classic Jasmine Jasudavicius style. And I think that is where she's going to be able to win this one. I think Ariana De Silva can find some good power shots in the first round, but then I think Jasudavicius, especially just cardio difference too, I think that she just runs away with it in the second and third round and grinds out a decision win here. Now, moving on to our feature prelim, Pedro Munhoz versus Aiemann Zahabi. Now, Pedro Munhoz, as we know, he's been in the top flight of the game for a very long time. But I think Aiemann Zahabi is going to push him further out, further away from that 16th spot and away from those rankings, because Zahabi has looked fantastic in his last 4 fights, which included taking the undefeated record of Javid Basharat. And the Basharat brothers, as we know, literally from UFC 308 with Farid, they are no joke. And that is completely thanks to his boxing. He has some of the best boxing in the division overall. I do honestly think so. Just strictly boxing, not saying anything else, because he just comes from such a good camp. I mean, he's got his brother Faraz Zahabi and ahead of TriStar. I mean, he's got training partners for days. Aiemann Zahabi, if he was any younger and this good, he would be causing damage and getting into the rankings for sure. But obviously, being a bit older, I think it is a bit of a struggle, but I do think that he can reach right to that point, because I see him beating Pedro Munhoz by a decision here. I mean, he's got the 4-inch reach advantage, well, 3.5-inch reach advantage, and he's just the better boxer. I mean, Pedro Munhoz is a sucker for punishment, and the issue with Munhoz especially is his style is so good for him when he's younger, because Munoz uses a lot of movement. He's good at ducking, weaving. He's good at just overall just good on his feet in terms of his movement. But the fact that he is getting older, he's 38 years old now, it's just really working against his style, and it's just completely, his style is completely hindered by his age. That's what I'm trying to say. He's not the fastest anymore, and a guy like Aiemann Zahabi with that crisper boxing, I think that he can really catch Munoz and get that decision win, because Pedro Munoz getting this to the ground, 18% takedown accuracy against an 80% takedown defensive Zahabi, that's easier said than done. And on the feet, if we're keeping it there, which I think Zahabi will be able to, he is going to outland Pedro Munoz. I think it's going to be a 29-28 decision. I think Pedro Munoz, obviously extremely durable. I don't see Zahabi taking him out, no way. I think Pedro Munoz overall, I think he can use that speed in the first round, but the second and third, I think he drowns out, and I think Zahabi just really takes that momentum away with the boxing and steals the decision on damage and volume. Now, moving on to the main card, Mike Malott versus Trevin Giles. Now, Mike Malott has a lot to prove here. If he doesn't get this win, that's Canada out the window, because we don't have a lot. I'm pretty sure Canada in the last year on Dana White's Contender Series has gone 0-6. So they're not doing very well. Canadians in general just not having a good time right now. And Mike Malott is spearheading them at this point. So he really, really needs to get this win here. And against Trevin Giles, he is good. He's got power, and he's got some submission threat there, but the thing I don't like about Giles is he keeps his hands very low, and he's struggled against fighters who pressure him, like Dricus du Plessis, like Carlos Prates, and that's the thing that I think, I just don't see him really threatening Malott a whole lot. In all honesty, I think Malott is just the better fighter overall. I mean, he's got very nice body kicks, BJJ black belt. He's got improved wrestling while he's been in the UFC, and especially improved from the regional scene. And also with him training in Sacramento at Team Alpha Male, he's got a very nice guillotine. And I point that out because Trevin Giles, his kryptonite is the ground game, and specifically is the guillotine. He's lost most of those submissions, but I'm pretty sure all of those submissions are by guillotine, his losses. So that's where I think Malott can really find a way to get this done, because Team Alpha Male have their ways of getting those guillotines done. They're very infamous for those, without a doubt, for the opponent. And obviously, Malott just has that chip on his shoulder. He has something to prove, especially fighting Magny at 297, winning the whole entire fight up until the last minute where he gets ground and pounded out. So obviously, he has a humongous chip on his shoulder. He's back in Canada. He's got to make this happen. And honestly, with that hole in Giles' game being that ground game, and obviously the submission defense, Mike Malott is going to get the submission win here. And also, to point out, if you haven't actually seen, did a bit of deeper digging, Mike Malott actually out-grappled him in Fury Pro Grappling as well. So that just boosts his confidence in terms of knowing that he can literally beat Trevin Giles on the ground when it comes to BJJ. So Mike Malott, I don't think he has a real excuse here at all. And Giles he's been exposed by competition, like a lot of good competition. I mean, he's had experience for sure, but his chin's weak, his submission defense isn't great. He's just a very middle of the road kind of fighter. And that's where I think Mike Malott, he has to get it done, but I think he will ultimately get it done. I think he is just the better fighter pretty much absolutely everywhere. Moving up the card to Marc-Andre Barriault versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Now, this is a bit of a tricky fight because both of them got taken out in their last fights pretty brutally, but I do believe that Marc-Andre Barriault is just the better fighter, to be honest. I think, especially the cardio, is really going to draw through with this fight. Don't get me wrong, Stoltzfus, good Muay Thai base, and he counters very well. But Barriault, with the cardio and with the power and the speed, I think, in the exchanges too, I think we're going to be getting a KO TKO on this one. I think Barriault is going to come back strong. Obviously, he got annihilated by Joe Pyfer, don't get me wrong. But Stoltzfus also got annihilated by Bruno Ferreira, so we're pretty even there in a sense. And Barrio, ultimately, he just throws at a higher clip. I mean, he throws more strikes, he's cleaner with the striking overall, doesn't really overextend with his strikes, and he won't make it easy for Stoltzfus to get this fight to the ground, because that's where Stoltzfus ultimately is going to need to get this fight, and I just don't see it happening. I think Barrio is just, his takedown defense is pretty decent, but also as well, it's the timing of his strikes. I can easily see him timing a really good shot, good uppercut or something, while Stoltzfus is trying to get in for the takedown. And I think in round 2, I think he does get it done by that KO TKO. Moving up the card, Takeo Machado versus Brenton Ribeiro. Now, Machado, obviously, he's cutting down to 205 now, which I think will work very well for him in this fight, because he is a high volume striker and picks his shots very well. And I think the issue was at heavyweight is that speed that he had. I think there was the fighters that he fought, like Dontel Mays, is just more naturally adjusted and adapted to the speed that you need at heavyweight. And Machado cutting down, I think just with that speed there and him being lighter, I think that he is just going to find more success. Now, don't get me wrong, he can be very passive. Like, he coasted way too much against Mick Parkin and obviously lost that fight. And ultimately, he can't do that against Brenton Ribeiro, because Brenton Ribeiro has a lot of KO power. He has submissions. He's just, without a doubt, the more explosive fighter out of the two. But the issue is that Brenton Ribeiro is, you look at an explosive scale to a technical scale. Explosive is up here, technical is down here, because Brenton Ribeiro, he is a guy that doesn't have technical striking. He throws 1-2s, doesn't really throw hooks or anything, and ultimately his chin has been tested badly. I mean, he's, especially recently, he got taken out pretty badly by Zhang, and ultimately I just think KO Machado is, realistically, he's just a better striker overall. He's got a good ground game too. I mean, obviously we don't have a lot from him in MMA, but he is good on the ground. I've seen him in the regional scene, seen him in some grappling stuff as well, and he just doesn't have that many holes I think Brenton Ribeiro is going to easily exploit. There is a strong possibility Brenton Ribeiro could definitely get this done in the first round by a KO TKO, or possibly a submission, without a doubt. So it's a dangerous fight to pick, especially with a KO Machado dropping down in weight, which could test his chin. Obviously, he's never been finished, against a guy like Brenton Ribeiro, who is so explosive in that natural weight class. But ultimately, I do think that Machado, he's just technical enough. I think the speed is going to work in his advantage here. Much more technical than Ribeiro, and I think he is going to be able to dictate the pace from the second round. I think Ribeiro is going to have him in a bit of trouble in the first, but then I think the second and third, on that technical ability, I think he's going to be able to get this one done by a decision. Moving up the card to Derrick Lewis versus Jhonata Diniz. Now, this is a sick fight. I definitely understand why they made this one, because these guys pretty much have no ground game, and they are both just bomb throwing strikers. And ultimately, if there's any fight that Lewis needs to use takedowns in, it's 100% this one, because we know Jhonata Diniz is very one-dimensional, no ground game whatsoever. He is a very good kickboxer, though. Very good kickboxer, very clean with his strikes, very good with his counter strikes. And I will say, on the feet, he's faster than Lewis. And honestly, I would actually probably go with Lewis if Diniz didn't have that Carl Williams fight. I think the fact that Diniz had that Carl Williams fight, Carl Williams is lighter on the feet. He was looking very good up to fighting Jhonata Diniz. Diniz was very fast, just very composed, stuffed pretty much all of his takedowns as well. And if Carl Williams isn't getting Jhonata Diniz down, I don't see Derrick Lewis I don't see him going to be able to do it either, to be honest. And that kickboxing, that advanced kickboxing that he has, I think that he's going to get this done by a KO TKO. I think it's going to be in the second round, probably start of the second round, possibly the end of the first round, to be honest. Like, because we know Lewis has the power, but Lewis does overextend with his strikes. We do know that because he's just a one-hitter quitter. Like, he will just kill you. Whereas Diniz, he is very fast with the counter striking, doesn't really overextend as well. And having that takedown defense there, obviously, and his feints on the feet. Very nice feints, very nice leg kicks. I think he's just going to be able to break down Derrick Lewis in that first round. And then in the second round, I see Lewis really getting frustrated, agitated with those leg kicks. And I think Lewis throws a very strong overhand, overextends, and then Diniz with that counter striking. I think he will catch Lewis clean on the back of the head, back of the temple, behind the ear, pardon me. And I think he will drop him, cut out Lewis's equilibrium, and then ground and pound finish him with a KO finish. I do think so in that second round. Moving up to the co-main event, Erin Blanchfield versus Rose Namajunas. Now, this is a very good women's fight. Without a doubt, flyweight division in that upper echelon is very good. And these two, obviously, Erin Blanchfield, without a doubt, is the most dangerous fighter on the ground. She is very good with her submissions, very good transitionally, even against fighters like Manon, Alexa Grasso, Shevchenko. I think that she honestly can get it done over any of them more consistently. And we look at her fight with Manon Fiorot. Manon is a BJJ black belt and has a karate black belt as well. And she did not want to go to the ground with Erin Blanchfield at all. And that's where Erin Blanchfield obviously has that aura when it comes to the ground game. She is extremely dangerous, and we know what she's done to 4 of her opponents. But when we look at Rose, movement, experience, the long-range striking arsenal that she has as well, that's going to get it done. 29-28 decision here. She's very good in the clinch, and she's very good with her wrestling on the ground too. Defensive-based wrestling to avoid submissions. She has only been taken out once by submission against Esparza when she was like 22 years old. So it's really hard to actually count that. And obviously Erin Blanchfield is the dangerous one. And if it gets to the ground, I'd be nervous, without a doubt, for my pick. But granted, even though Erin is bigger and has that ground game threat there, I just think that Rose is just very consistent on the feet, has the long range weapons. Obviously, she's got a shorter reach than Blanchfield, but we know Blanchfield is pretty piss poor on the feet. Manon easy 50-45 to her when it came to the feet, easily. And Blanchfield, going from that fight to this one, she would just definitely not have improved enough to deal with Rose, whether it comes to clinch striking, whether it comes to boxing, whether it comes to fighting completely at range. That's where Rose Namajunas can really take advantage of this fight and be on for 3 rounds, because this being a 3-round fight even puts more emphasis for Rose, because gives less time for Blanchfield to find the submission, and Rose has so much experience with 5 rounds. And when we look at their fights both of their fights against Manon Fiorot, Manon struggled a bit against Rose, and this is Rose just coming up to flyweight. Got to remember, Rose is just a straw weight. It's her coming up to flyweight. Half of Manon's face was just bloody. It was a bloody mess. And then when we look at Erin's face was a mess against Manon. I mean, the striking difference there is completely obvious, and Rose was fighting with a broken finger in that fight. Her pinky broke in the first round against Manon Fiorot, who is arguably, honestly, I think is the best fighter in that division. And yeah, Erin I just don't think she can cope on the feet against Rose Namajunas. I don't think she has the takedown arsenal to really get Rose out of there and obviously get her to the ground and submit her. So I'm going to be taking Rose in this fight. I think it will be close regardless, because it just depends how Erin gets off the mark. But Rose is going to be very, very good with that lateral and linear movement, as she always is in her fights, and this is the most important fight to do it in. So I just do see Rose outpointing her, stuffing the takedowns, and getting that unanimous decision win by a 29-28. I think Erin will be able to do good with the grappling exchanges when it comes to the 3rd round. I think she'll get some success there and beat Rose on control. But the first 2 rounds, I think they'll just escape her, and Rose will get that win. Now, moving on to the main event, we have Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi. Now, Albazi, let's start with him. Very snappy jab. Guys, he's actually pretty decent with his striking and has power. He dropped Alessandro Costa with a very clean uppercut, so he's got the timing there too. And he obviously has very good top control. He's got the wrestling base and he's got submissions there as well. And he's pretty much finished almost all of his wins, whereas Brandon Moreno has never been finished. So this is very much an immovable object in Brandon Moreno against an unstoppable force in Amir Albazi, and those fights are always entertaining. And if you haven't watched my 5 outcomes we must see before 2025 hot take video, this is one of the matchups that I need to see Brandon Moreno take out Amir Albazi, and it's going to speak to it in this matchup because Albazi is going to try and wrestle fuck the shit out of Brandon Moreno for the entire fight if he can, because Brandon Moreno is a guy that is very dynamic on the feet. He throws very strange offbeat, like looping overhands. He's someone that is very hard to dictate. And obviously a fighter like Figueiredo struggled. It's going to be very difficult for Amir Albazi. And I mean, obviously Pantoja and Royval's improved leaps and bounds and has really improved his game. But Pantoja is the guy that really has Moreno's kryptonite. He's a guy that is extremely durable and can just consistently wrestle for 5 rounds. Whereas Amir Albazi can wrestle, without a doubt, and he's durable, but he doesn't necessarily have the cardio that Pantoja has and that experience there. Remember, Moreno has fought a shit ton of 5-round fights. Amir Albazi has fought 1, I believe. I think it's only 1 against Kai Kara-France, which he robbed Kai Kara-France in that fight, so that really pissed me off. But anyway, sidetracked. Brandon Moreno has also just fought the better competition. I mean, he's fought Pantoja, he's fought Royval. I mean, he fought Kai, which is a lot more entertaining, and that's the entertainment factor in why we need Moreno to win this, because flyweight is good, but it's one of the thinner divisions, and Amir Albazi is just another one of those guys that will just try and find the easiest way to win in terms of just being able to just wrestle fuck someone for 25 minutes, whereas Brandon Moreno has given us war after war after war. We need this guy back on top, without a doubt. Now, can he do it? Can Moreno win this? I mean, he's the favorite for a reason, and I believe that he can with that dynamic striking that I was talking about. I mean, with the overhands, those looping overhands, he's got great boxing combinations in general, which is more than Albazi has on the feet. So Moreno has a deeper arsenal of strikes on the feet compared to Albazi. Now, Albazi, I'd probably say, has got more power overall. But I mean, so does Figueiredo, and Figueiredo couldn't get Moreno out of there in 4 fights. So if Figueiredo can't do that, I just don't see Albazi being able to do that in comparison. But with Moreno beating Amir Albazi on the feet, the biggest take for Moreno is the ground game, because Amir Albazi obviously needing to get this to the ground. Moreno on the ground, his takedown defense is okay, but the more so the fact is that he actually has takedown offense. So he has the opportunity and the ability to actually take Amir Albazi down, which if he does early on, that completely throws Albazi's game out of whack. He would never think that Moreno would just shoot for him. And Moreno obviously got submissions, 11-0 with submissions, and most importantly on the ground in terms of Albazi's offense and combating that, Brandon Moreno's scrambling capability is the key factor in this fight, because Albazi hasn't fought anyone really notable on the ground, whereas Moreno obviously has. I mean, Albazi fought Alessandro Costa, who is good on the ground, but he knocked him out. But Moreno, he has fought the much better competition, and the competition that is similar in style to Albazi. And I think with that scrambling capability, the submission arsenal and threat that he has offensively on the ground, as well as the better arsenal in terms of the boxing, just striking combinations, I think Moreno can get this one done by a decision. I think that he's just defensively sound enough on the ground to not let Albazi, obviously submit him. And Moreno has a defensive threat on the ground to really combat Albazi, whether it comes to scrambles and taking his back, and obviously on the feet. Most importantly, on the feet, with the threat that he has, the boxing combinations, the chin, the god tier chin that he has as well. I just think that Moreno is just going to be too much. I think he's got too deep an arsenal, too deep of an experience, and I think he's going to be able to take this one. I think that he is going to be able to take it through from the 2nd to the 5th round. I think that Albazi will come pretty hard off the mark and find success in the 1st round just with his natural strength. He's a bit stronger than Moreno, and I think that that is where Brandon Moreno, after that, just getting settled into the fight with the striking combinations, with the ground game offensive threat, and the take, obviously the defense as well. When it comes to the submissions, I think that he has enough in the arsenal to overwhelm Albazi and get this one done, especially moving into those later rounds with the difference in their gas tank. So let's go, Brandon Moreno. Moving on to the Fight Card Awards, kicking off with Fight of the Night, I'm going with Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. I think this is just a classic combination of durability on both sides, both of them striking at pretty high volumes, and both of them have pretty decent ground games. We're getting a very fast-paced, full MMA-based game here. Now, moving on to Upset of the Night, I'm going to go with Amir Albazi. I think just the fact that he is an underdog, criminally underrated striking, amazing boxing. Obviously, Pedro Munoz is getting a lot older now. He's not as fast, and he needs that for his style. So his age is just a detriment to him. Albazi is younger. He's got a lot of momentum behind him. 4-fight win streak, beating a Basharat brother as well. I mean, there's a lot of ticks for Amir Albazi here, and I think that there is good money to be won on him in this matchup. Now, moving on to fighter to watch, I got to go with Youssef Zalal. The guy, obviously, coming back into the UFC. I mean, he's looked very good so far, and he is just improving and improving and improving, really. He's just a well-rounded fighter, but the durability is off the charts. And he's got a very dangerous submission threat, but on the feet, he is really improving. And against a guy like Jack Shaw that is very defensively sound, if he can really get this done like dominantly by a 30-27 or possibly even a finish, this guy's pumping up the ranks. And I'm saying it now, I think in the second stint, with how good he is looking, I think we could be looking at a top 15 at some point. Now, moving on to finish of the night, sadly for Derrick Lewis, I got to go with Jhonata Diniz. The guy, he's just a more clinical, just more polished kickboxer. He's just got better striking, and they both cancel out on the ground because they have no ground games. And you're looking at that basic math, the striker who is more advanced, more technical, more clinical is going to win. Obviously, me saying that, now Derrick Lewis is probably going to go out there and absolutely fucking chin him because he has that much power. But if we're looking at it from an analytical point, I got to go with Jhonata Diniz getting the finish here, and it's going to be a pretty brutal KO at that. Getting that counter shot and getting the KO through the ground and pound. Thank you for watching the video and for supporting the channel. If you haven't already seen my mythical matchups video on Michael Chandler versus Josh Emmett, the two muscle nuggets fighting at 155 pounds, because we're not going to get this fight, but this would be a dream fight to see. Just the pinnacle of entertainment. If you haven't seen that already, I'll leave it on the screen to see who would have won that matchup. And please like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.